Did you know that 3 very small English words can completely change the meaning of your sentence? Words that look simple, sound familiar, and appear everywhere, but still confuse millions of English learners every day. Maybe you've seen them before. Maybe you've tried to use them and suddenly your mind went blank. You stopped speaking, you doubted yourself, and the sentence never came out. If that has ever happened to you, this episode is exactly what you need. Because today we're going to make these words feel natural, clear, and easy to use.
Yes. The words are be, been, and being. They're short, they're common, and they're incredibly important in real English conversations. But the problem is, most learners only see them inside grammar rules, tables, and complicated explanations. And that makes these words feel scary. So in today's episode, we're doing something different. No heavy grammar. No confusing terminology. Just simple, natural conversation with real-life examples you can understand and use immediately.
In the next minutes, you're going to hear these 3 words in everyday situations: dreams, experiences, emotions, and daily conversations. And by the end of this episode, you won't just recognize them. You'll feel more confident using them when you speak. Not perfect, but confident. And confidence is what truly helps you communicate in English.
So if you've ever stopped speaking because you didn't know whether to say be, been, or being, stay with us. This episode will clear that confusion step by step in the simplest way possible.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Speak English Every Day, the podcast where English is not just a subject you study, but a language you actually live. This is the place where we slow things down, speak clearly, and focus on real conversations instead of complicated grammar rules. Our goal is simple: to help you feel more comfortable, more natural, and more confident every time you open your mouth to speak English. No pressure, no stress, just steady progress, one conversation at a time.
I'm Sara, and I'm really happy you're spending these minutes with us today. We know that learning a language takes time, patience, and a lot of courage, especially when you're just starting or when you feel stuck at the same level. That's why this podcast exists, to give you a safe, friendly space where English sounds clear, simple, and useful. Think of this as your daily listening practice, your conversation partner, and your motivation all in one place. Today's topic may look very small, but it has a big impact on how people speak English. We're talking about 3 tiny words that appear everywhere: be, been, and being. They're short, they're common, and they're part of hundreds of everyday sentences. But even though learners see them all the time, these words often create confusion, hesitation, and sometimes even silence. Many students understand them when they read or listen, but the moment they try to use them in a sentence, something feels uncertain.
Yes, and that moment of uncertainty is very real. Maybe you've experienced it yourself. You start speaking, everything is going fine, and then suddenly you need one of these words. Your brain pauses. You think, wait, is it be, been, or being? And in that moment, instead of choosing one and continuing, you stop completely. The sentence disappears, your confidence drops, and you feel like your English isn't good enough. But the truth is, this happens to almost every learner at some point.
A big reason for this confusion is how these words are usually taught. In many classes or books, learners see long grammar charts, technical terms, and complicated explanations. They see things like infinitive form, past participle, or continuous aspect. And while those terms may be useful for advanced students, for many learners they just create stress. Instead of helping, the rules start to feel like obstacles, and the words themselves begin to look scary.
Exactly. And when something feels scary in a language, people start avoiding it. They choose shorter sentences. They stop expressing certain ideas. Or sometimes they stop speaking completely because they don't want to make a mistake. But language is not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be used. These three words are not enemies, they're tools. And today, we're going to treat them like tools, not like grammar monsters.
So instead of thinking about grammar rules, we're going to think about meaning and feeling. We're going to connect these words to real life, dreams, experiences, emotions, and everyday situations. Because that's where language actually lives. Not in textbooks, but in conversations, in small moments, in the things we say to friends, coworkers, and family. Let's begin with the simplest of the three words, be. This is the base form, the starting point, the root of many English sentences. Even though it's very small, be is one of the most powerful words in the language because it helps us talk about identity, goals, behavior, and ideas. When learners first see the word be, they sometimes think it's too basic to matter. But in reality, it appears in some of the most meaningful sentences we say every day, especially when we talk about who we are or who we want to become.
Yes, and one of the most common places you'll hear be is in sentences about dreams or goals. Think about phrases like, I want to be confident, or I want to be fluent in English. These sentences are not about the present, and they're not about the past. They're about the future. They show direction. They show intention. When you use be in this way, you're talking about the person you hope to become, the version of yourself that you're working toward. That's why be often feels hopeful and forward-looking.
Another very common use of be is in advice. Think about the kinds of things people say when they want to help someone. A parent might say, be careful. A teacher might say, be quiet, please. A friend might say, be patient, or be yourself. These sentences are short, simple, and very natural. Notice something important here, these sentences are not focused on time. They're not about the past or the future. They're about how you should act or how you should behave in a certain moment.
Exactly. When someone says, be kind, they're not describing you. They're giving you guidance. It's like a gentle direction for your behavior. And this is why be is so common in instructions, signs, and daily conversations. You'll see things like be careful with the glass, be on time, or be respectful. These are not complicated sentences, but they carry important meaning. They help people understand what to do or how to act.
Let's make this more personal. Imagine you're thinking about your English journey. You might say, I want to be more confident when I speak, or I want to be better at listening. These sentences are powerful because they express growth. They show that you're not just learning random words, you're changing, improving, and moving forward. And that small word be helps you express that idea in a very natural way.
So if you remember one simple idea about be, let it be this. Be is about possibility. It's about advice, goals, and ideas that are not fixed yet. It gives you space to grow. It connects who you are now with who you want to become. And that's why, even though it's just 2 letters, be plays a very big role in everyday English. Now let's move to the second word, been. This is the one that usually makes learners feel nervous, because it doesn't appear alone very often, and it almost always comes with another word. But instead of thinking about grammar rules, let's think about meaning. The word been is deeply connected to experience. It talks about something that started in the past and still has importance now. When you hear been in a sentence, you can usually imagine a small story behind it, something that happened earlier and continues to affect the present moment.
Yes, and that's why been often feels more emotional than people expect. For example, when someone says, "I have been tired today," they're not just talking about 1 second. They're talking about a whole period of time. Maybe the morning was stressful, maybe the afternoon was busy, and now, at this moment, they still feel that tiredness. So been connects the earlier part of the day with how they feel now. It creates a bridge between the past and the present.
Another very common example is when we talk about places or life experiences. You might hear someone say, "I have been to New York," or "I have been to that restaurant before." In these sentences, the exact time is not important. The person is not saying when they went. What matters is the experience itself. They went there at some point in their life, and now that experience is part of their story. So when you hear been, you can often think of the idea, this happened before and it matters now.
It's also very common to use been when talking about activities over time. For example, "I have been studying English for 6 months," or "I have been working a lot this week." These sentences show duration. They tell us that the action didn't just happen once. It continued over a period of time, and the effect is still present. Maybe the person is improving, maybe they're tired, maybe they're proud of their progress. All of that meaning is inside that small word been.
There's another important thing to remember about been. It doesn't like to be alone. It needs support. You'll usually see it after the words have or has. For example, "I have been busy," "she has been working," or "they have been here before." So if you ever feel unsure, just remember this simple idea. Been is a social word. It wants a partner. It feels comfortable when have or has is next to it.
Now let's talk about the third word, being. This one is very interesting because it feels more emotional and more human than the others. While be often talks about goals or advice, and been talks about experiences, being usually focuses on what is happening right now, especially when we talk about behavior. It helps us describe how someone is acting in a specific moment, not how they are all the time. And this difference is very important, because it can completely change the tone of a sentence.
Exactly. Let's imagine a simple situation. You have a friend who is normally very talkative and energetic, but today they're very quiet. You might look at them and say, "You're being very quiet today. Is everything okay?" In that sentence, you're not saying your friend is a quiet person forever. You're only talking about this moment, this day, this situation. That's what being does. It shows something temporary, something that can change.
And this is why being appears so often in conversations about emotions and relationships. For example, you might hear sentences like, "You're being rude," "You're being very kind," or "You're being too hard on yourself." These sentences are not permanent labels. They don't define the person's entire personality. Instead, they describe how the person is acting in that specific moment. And because of that, the sentences often feel softer and more understanding.
Let's compare two sentences to see this more clearly. First, "You are rude." That sounds very strong. It feels like a judgment about someone's character. It sounds permanent, like you're saying that's the kind of person they are. But now listen to this. "You are being rude." This sentence feels different. It suggests that the behavior is temporary. Maybe the person is tired, stressed, or upset. It leaves space for change, and that makes the sentence sound less harsh.
We also use being when we want to describe what we are doing or feeling in the present moment. For example, "I'm being honest with you," or "I'm being very careful today." These sentences focus on the present situation, not on your permanent personality. You're talking about how you're acting right now, in this specific context. And that makes being a very useful word when you want to express your feelings or intentions clearly.
So if you want a simple way to remember being, think of it as the word of the moment. It talks about behavior that is happening now or around now, and it often appears in emotional or personal conversations. It shows change, it shows temporary actions, and it helps your English sound more natural and more human. Once you start noticing it in daily conversations, you'll see that being is everywhere, especially when people talk about feelings and relationships. Now that we've talked about each word separately, let's slow down and look at them together. Because the real understanding comes when you see how be, been, and being work in the same situation. Instead of thinking about grammar rules, imagine a real person, with real goals, real effort, and real emotions. Language becomes easier when you connect it to a life story, not a grammar chart.
Yes, let's imagine a learner named Alex. Alex is studying English and thinking about the future. One day, Alex says, "I want to be fluent in English." That sentence is about a dream. It's about a goal that hasn't happened yet, but it's something Alex wants very much. That's where be appears, when we talk about hopes, goals, or the person we want to become.
Now let's move forward in time. Alex continues studying every day. Some days are easy, some days are difficult, but the effort continues. After a few months, Alex says, "I have been practicing English every night." That sentence shows experience. It tells us that the practice started in the past and continues to the present. That's the world of been, time, effort, and experience connected to now.
And now let's look at the present moment. Alex is in a conversation with a friend and notices something new. The words are coming out more easily. The fear is smaller. The voice is stronger. So Alex says, "I am being more confident when I speak." That sentence is about change happening right now. It doesn't mean Alex is a completely confident person forever. It means, in this moment, the behavior is different. That's where being lives, in the present, in temporary actions and feelings.
So in one simple life story, we can see all three words working together. I want to be fluent is the dream. I have been practicing is the journey. I am being more confident is the change happening now. Same person, same goal, same life, but three different moments and three different words to express them.
And that's the key idea we want you to remember. You don't need to think about grammar names or complicated rules. Just think about time and feeling. Be is about who you want to become. Been is about what you've experienced. And being is about what's happening right now. When you see them this way, they stop feeling confusing and they start feeling natural. Now that we've talked about the meaning of be, been, and being, let's look at something very real, mistakes. Because this is the moment where many learners start to feel nervous. They understand the idea, they recognize the words, but when it's time to speak, the brain suddenly freezes. The sentence stops in the middle, and the learner thinks, "What if I say it wrong?" But here's the truth, mistakes are not the enemy. Silence is.
Exactly. Every mistake you make in English is a sign that you're trying, that you're experimenting, that you're using the language. And that's a good thing. The problem is not the mistake itself. The problem is when fear stops you from speaking at all. So in this section, we're going to look at some very common errors with these three words, and we'll fix them in a gentle, simple way. No stress, no judgment.
Let's start with one of the most common mistakes learners make, "I am been tired." You might have heard this before, or maybe you've even said it yourself. And that's okay. This mistake usually happens because the learner is trying to connect the present with the past. The idea is correct, but the structure needs a small change. Instead of saying, I am been tired, we say, I have been tired. Remember, been usually needs a partner, have or has.
Yes, you can think of it like this. Been doesn't like to be alone. It feels more comfortable when have or has is next to it. So instead of I am been busy, you say, I have been busy. Instead of she has been here, you say, she has been here. It's a small adjustment, but it makes the sentence sound natural and correct.
Another common mistake happens with being. Some learners say things like, I being happy today, or he being very nice. Again, the idea is understandable, but something is missing. The sentence needs the verb am, is, or are before being. So the correct versions would be, I am being happy today, or he is being very nice. That small helper verb makes the sentence complete.
Now let's move to the most important part of this episode, real-life use. Because at the end of the day, English is not something you analyze, it's something you use. No one stops in the middle of a conversation to think about grammar terms. People speak, they react, they express feelings, and the language flows naturally. So the question is, how do be, been, and being actually appear in everyday situations?
Let's start with be in daily life. This word shows up constantly in advice, instructions, and simple guidance. Think about what people say at home, at work, or at school. A parent might say, be careful on the road. A manager might say, be on time for the meeting. A friend might say, be yourself. These sentences are short, but they carry meaning. They're not about the past or the future. They're about how someone should act in a certain moment.
And be is also very common when people talk about dreams and goals. You'll hear sentences like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be more confident, or I want to be better at speaking English. These sentences are emotional because they talk about the future version of the person. They show hope, intention, and direction. So when learners talk about their goals, be often appears naturally.
Now let's look at been in real conversations. This word is everywhere when people talk about their experiences. For example, someone might say, I've been busy all day, or I've been working a lot this week. These sentences help explain the present. If someone looks tired, they might say, I've been studying all night. So been often answers the silent question, why do you feel this way now?
You'll also hear been when people talk about places they visited. For example, I've been to Paris, I've been to that restaurant, or I've been there before. These sentences are very common in small talk and casual conversations. Notice that people don't always mention the exact time. The important part is the experience itself. It becomes part of their personal story.
And finally, let's talk about being in everyday life. This word often appears in emotional or personal conversations, especially when we talk about behavior. For example, someone might say, you're being very quiet today, or he's being really helpful, or I'm being honest with you. These sentences focus on the present moment. They describe how someone is acting right now, not who they are forever. And just like that, we've come to the end of today's episode. It's amazing how 3 tiny words, be, been, and being, can carry so much meaning, so much emotion, and so much life in our conversations. They're small, but powerful. And if you listen carefully, you'll start noticing them everywhere in English, on TV, in podcasts, in conversations with friends, and even in your own sentences as you practice.
Exactly. Remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is confidence. Every time you speak, every time you try a sentence, even if it's not 100% correct, you're moving forward. Be helps you express your dreams and intentions. Bin helps you share your experiences and explain your journey. And being helps you describe what's happening right now, your actions, your feelings, and temporary behaviors. Master these ideas slowly, and English will start to feel natural, alive, and human.
Before we say goodbye, let's take a moment for a small practice. Repeat after us, even if you're alone. I want to be confident. I have been learning every day. I am being more positive now. Beautiful. You just used all 3 words naturally in one short practice. Keep doing exercises like this daily, and you'll see how quickly these words start appearing automatically in your speech.
And now, a quick reminder. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Speak English every day, and turn on notifications so you never miss a lesson. Every like, every subscription, helps us continue creating content for learners like you. More importantly, it keeps you motivated and connected to your English journey.
Also, share this episode with a friend who is learning English. Talk about these 3 words together. Practice with each other. Learning is faster and more fun when it's shared. And don't forget to leave a comment below telling us which word you found most useful today, be, been, or being. We love hearing from you and seeing your progress.
Bye everyone. Keep practicing, and remember, your English journey is about progress, not perfection. Keep speaking, and enjoy every moment of learning.